Shalom, and welcome back to the practical Parsha for Parshat Nitzavim. Nitzavim is chapter 29 in the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, and it begins, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. You stand this day, all of you, before Hashem your God, your tribal chieftains, your elders, and your law officers, every man of Israel, your young, your wives, and your convert who is within your camps, from your woodcutters, the wood choppers, to the water drawers. What is it that you're standing here for? What is it that we're all here together for? Now remember, by the way, when it says you're all here, that means all, several million Jews were all gathered. And here he even spells it out. Make no mistake, not one person's missing. Everyone's here together. For what? For your passage into the covenant of Hashem, your God, and his oath curse that Hashem, your God, is making with you today. First, let's understand historically when this was said, just to have a chronological idea.
There was still
This was, and we actually know on the calendar when this was said. Remember, there are many parts of the Torah that we may not know, we may never know, and it may not be important for us to know. That's most probably the reason we don't know when exactly it was said. For us, it's important that it was said. It's recorded in the Torah by Hashem's decree, and that is what's important to us. This happens to be the very last day of Moshe's career as the leader of the Jews, as the active leader of the Jews, I have to say, meaning the very final day of his life. The 7th day of the month of Adar, which happens to be the same month of Purim. Moshe says to them, we are making or renewing this covenant. Now this covenant is very important because this covenant is going to be with all the people that are going to go enter into a new reality. First of all, the reality of Moshe being gone, and with him will be gone all those, I want to say, unique perks that will no longer ever exist, such as getting the manna, getting the water from the well. Very soon, and I don't want to get into detail, but very soon after Moshe's passing, and there's a debate and discussion, I should say, as to how soon, but very soon, that's going to all be gone. You're going to go land back to reality, go into the land of Israel, and have to live life in this world. As we say, Olam Hazeh, this world, not in some kind of aloof spiritual, almost semi-removed from reality, existence, which was. And therefore we need to re-establish this covenant. What is the concept of a covenant? What does it mean when we say covenant? People sometimes misuse the word, or perhaps more than sometimes, too often. What a covenant really means, and really what the purpose of a covenant is, and it's actually explained in the Hasidic teachings, and it's very important and worthwhile to go into it for a few moments. A covenant is made when? And made by whom? Who makes a covenant? Two people, or two entities, in this case, the Jewish people and Hashem and the Jewish people, that obviously have a very strong bond. They have a strong connection. They love each other. There's a love, there's a connection, there's a harmonious relationship. So what is the purpose of a covenant? Why do you need a covenant? You like each other, it's all good. What the covenant does is makes it irrevocable. Mm-hmm. What the covenant says is, right now we have this bond. Right now we have this active relationship. There's a mutual loving and understanding relationship. But something can come up. Something can go wrong. Mm-hmm. Someone throws a monkey wrench into this whole machine. What's going to happen then? And therefore we make the covenant now that regardless of whatever may be, there can never, ever be a reversal of this connection, a reversal of this bond. That's what a covenant is. It's interesting that the same term is used for a baby boy that has a circumcision. There you can actually see it physically, that it's irreversible. Okay, you cannot go away from it. You can't step away from it. You can't step back. The same term is used, although it's not exactly the same, albeit it is to a great degree, a marriage. We use the covenant of marriage. What is marriage? Two people who love each other. Obviously, if they want to get married, they have a common interest, they have a reason that they want to get together. So what do you need a marriage for? I'm not speaking religiously. I'm saying, why are you getting married? What is the marriage? The marriage says that right now, we're in what I call it the lust period. And then we are in the love period. But what happens if we sometimes, as people say, fall out of love? I don't know how you fall out, I don't know how high it is love. But anyway, you fall out of love. Something went wrong. She angered you, you angered her. Something, life. Somebody sent me a clip, I have to share it. And it's good, especially this time of the year, where anytime you're going to be hearing this Parsha, whether it's this year, next year, any year, as I'm going to soon elaborate, it's always prior to Rosh Hashana. This is always read the Shabbat prior to Rosh Hashana, which we'll get to in a moment. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But speaking about family, speaking about falling out of love, and something's having issues, and this is Rabbi, I didn't hear the whole thing, but it really, really caught me. And it really, really caught my attention. And I really need to pay more attention to it. I confess. So, you want to have most problems in life solved? Treat your family like you treat strangers. Here's an example. You come to shul, and someone does something, you go, no, it's okay. Yeah. And at home, someone, what happened? What's going on over there? The familiarity sometimes creates that, right? You just treat your family like you treat them. But getting back to it, sometimes even we're so close, because we're so close, a little thing can erupt and turn the whole thing into disaster. And you know what? I'm going home. But this is your home. No, I mean to my mother or to my father. Whoa, we have a marriage. Or, you know what, I don't want to support. There's a covenant, which is legally binding for that reason. So you do it at a time, at the height of love, understanding and realizing, not being pessimistic per se, but understanding and realizing the realities in life. And we're not always going to be living in this bliss, in this blindfold bliss. There's going to be realities. There's going to be days we go to work every day and we're tired and we're irritated, we're hungry, we're lethargic. Whatever it is a covenant. That's what Moshe is doing with the people. This period of bliss, with all the ups and downs that it had, more ups and downs obviously, it's coming to an end. I know this is the day of my passing. Moshe didn't die by surprise. And we're going to renew this covenant. And this covenant is with everyone, with every single person. Equally. And he even spells it out. When I say equally, I don't mean general. I mean from the very top to the very lowest tier of society, the Jewish society, everybody's included in this covenant. Now, this Parsha, Atem Nitzavim Ayom Kulchem, you stand all this day, all of you this day, always, without fail, is read on the Shabbat prior to Rosh Hashana, the very last Shabbat of the year. There are most times, not this year actually, that also the next Parsha is read along with it, because there are two small Parshiyot, and remember we're going to complete it. It just depends on how the festivals fall out in the weekly calendar. But it happens to be that this year it's Nitzavim alone. Exclusively Nitzavim. Why do we read Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah? There are several reasons. Let's first go with the basic reason that's given in Halacha. If you recall, in last week's Parsha, we read all the curses. total of 98, and then the two general curses, so it makes it a total of 100 curses. And the reason why I took the time to emphasize that it really equals a total of 100 is because that's why there's actually a law in the Code of Jewish Law that a person should
say a
make
blessing
it a
at
point
least
to
100
say
times.
100 blessings every day. And the truth is, if you do the 3 prayers a day, and all the prayers that come before and after, and then including prayers around eating, not prayers, I'm sorry, blessings before and after eating, blessings after going to the bathroom and so on, most typical days, especially weekdays, I don't want to get into the details of it, most typical days, if not a fast day, if it's not a festival, when you have smaller prayers, as the Amidah, so we're deficient in the amount of blessings, you should cover all those blessings. And that's to counter the 100 curses. 100 blessings, counter 100 curses. But after hearing those 100 curses, and is this how we're going to end our year? Is this how we want the year to end? Even though it's in the Torah and it's all contingent on if you do so, but still. Therefore, before we complete the year and enter a new year, enter Rosh Hashanah, we read, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Buchem. You stand today. Now remember something. Even though that we know when this was said chronologically, we know the date, even though the year. But whenever it says in the Torah, Hayom, this day, it really refers to, at least on an esoteric level, to any time you're reading the Torah. And the Torah is alive. So this day means today. And what Hashem is telling us as we're going to read it on the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, you stand today. And interestingly, the word Nitzavim, this verb, it actually is not the typical one for standing. Okay, in Hebrew, to stand means la'amod. It should have said atem omdim, you stand upright, erect. Or kamim means to stand up. Nitzav means to stand steadfast. Thus the message, you're all here today. Even though you've heard all these things, and that's really what Moshe was telling them too. Like, you heard all of that, you all shake it. You're all here today. Which is, this covenant is the promise that explains why we're all here and there are people still studying Torah and Am Yisrael Chai.
Indeed.
Just like we made a covenant we can never separate from Hashem, so too, and that we see it. Regardless of whatever happened in history to the Jewish people, and which I don't have an explanation for, I don't understand, I don't know, I'm not God. God knows. For whatever his reason was, but you see that there was always, the refuge. There was always even a small remnant that survived and flourished. The world, as it says in the Midrash, the world cannot exist without the Jews and without the Torah. Without the Jewish people and without the Torah, there is no world. We can take a blow here, a blow there, not that it's invited, but even if it happens to us, it's not happening because we want it, but it happens to us. But this covenant that Hashem says, I cannot be without you, I cannot have the world without you, and you cannot be without me, that remains forever. And that will never, ever, ever go away. And that's why we read it before Rosh Hashanah. Now, on a much deeper level, Kabbalistically, and this is expounded upon in the Hasidic teachings, especially the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, whose birthday was last week, is a whole landmark discourse on these few verses here that says, Atem Nitzavim Hayom, you stand steadfast today, this day. What is the day? Ha-Yom is the day. What is the day? The day is the day of judgment. Rosh Hashanah. Esoterically, this is speaking about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the day of the whole year. It's the first day of the year. It's the day of judgment. It's the day we say that all beings in the world pass before Hashem in judgment. And Hashem tells us, Atem Nitzavim, how do you stand steadfast? Now understand, what does that mean, steadfast? When somebody comes in judgment and they're guilty, and they're found guilty, or they're given a verdict, you don't stand upright. You don't stand erect. wrecked. You're sunken. You're slumped. Your head somewhere between your shoulders, right? At best. And here he says you stand steadfast. That means, how can we assure to come out victorious and blessed in this day of judgment? He says when it's kulchem, when it's all of you. It's all of you in unity before Hashem. Now, if he says it's all of you, then the second verse, which is the second half of verse 9 and verse 10, is superfluous. He said all of you. What's all of you? All of you includes everyone, right? Here is the answer as to why he goes in to enumerating the various levels, the various tiers of society. You see, sometimes when you say unity, what you're really saying is, we're going to ignore everyone's individuality. We're going to ignore everyone's differences, and we're just going to be one. That's not true. It's not realistic. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay? I know it's a terrible example of it, but think of communism. Mm-hmm. Even communism in its truest, purest form, we're all equal. We're not all equal, and we will never be all equal. And the only people fighting for communism is who? The people on top, the fat cats who are enjoying the perks of life, and the idiots who are waiting in line 5 hours for a piece of bread, okay, are not. You know what I mean? And they're the counter-revolutionaries. Well, of course, they're starving. You understand? There's no equality. You cannot say there's no difference between us. There is a difference. One person's smarter, another person's less. Take society. Mm-hmm. Look at society. It's a fact that how does the saying, forgive my ignorance here, all men created equal under God? Yeah, it's true. But the fact is that you cannot compare somebody who did 10 years of medical training and they're a doctor, a surgeon, a very, very specialized surgeon, to somebody who's driving a garbage truck. Mm-hmm. Society needs both of them. And perhaps in many ways needs the garbage truck driver even more than the doctor. Because the doctor, you may go through your whole life without needing him or her. Mm-hmm. But you need a garbage collector, otherwise poop's going to hit the fan.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Correct? But you still can't say, they're all equal. They're not. They're certainly not making equal salary, and it's not because of discrimination. It's because this is an unskilled worker and somebody who's ready to tolerate the smell and maggots and flies and fleas. And this is a highly, trained professional. Maybe years of experience. So don't just tell me equal. And that's what Moshe's saying. Moshe's saying is we clearly have differences. There are different tiers in society. I'm not taking the rabbi and the chief rabbi and the rebbitzin and pulling them down and saying, you and the woodchopper are one. No, that's not equality. That's insanity. That's insanity. That's not being together. That's just distorting facts, distorting reality. It's unsustainable. What I'm saying is you have the different tiers. You have the higher, you have the lower. And yet, it's all of you together. How's that possible? Where's the unity? There's clear differences. There's clear lines dividing the various levels of society. So the Alter Rebbe explains with a fantastic metaphor of the human body. And you don't need to go far. We all live the human body. We are humans. We live the body. What do we have? So it's clear that one needs no biology or medical background to understand that the head is the most vital organ. The heart, I may not see it, I may not know what it looks like inside, but I understand that the food goes down here and it processes here, right? And thank God it doesn't come back up here. It helps me, with the energy I need, what his refuse goes out, and all that I understand without having any professional level knowledge. What I also do understand is that if you were to compare the foot and the head, you can't live without a head. Well, our society is very stubborn about proving that. Well, you can't live without a brain.
It's getting more evident.
Yeah, and it's becoming, and sadly they're starting to prove themselves right. But let's just say that your old-fashioned people like us, no, I hope not. But the old-fashioned people like us, you can't live without a brain. You can't function
after 220.
right. You can't function. You can't function without a brain. You cannot live without a heart. You can't breathe without lungs. So these are very vital organs. So compared to the foot, God forbid the soldier loses his feet, he can still live. The quality of life might diminish, it might be totally altered, but it still is a life. That's true. So the head is definitely up here, both figuratively and literally, and the feet are down here. It's true. But think about it. There is aspects in which the feet are much greater than the head. The head can have every idea and every possible imagination, but it cannot implement it without the feet, without getting there, without the hands. Right? You understand? Those are the tools. So it's true that in general the head is higher, but there are things in which not only the foot is helping the head, the foot is higher than the head, is greater than the head, and has its importance. And that, says the Alter Rebbe, that's what he says is the idea of what Moshe is telling the Jewish people and what we need to know and become Rosh Hashana. Of course, when we become Rosh Hashana at the synagogue, there's the rabbi stands where the rabbi stands, and the chazan, the cantors, the one who sounded the shofar, and maybe the more important people or the heavier hitters in the front row. That's true. And you have the learned people and the teachers and the this, and then you have the simpletons. That's true. But if one stands there and says, well, I am more important, I'm from the head, and therefore I don't need the foot, I don't need the woodchopper, or what is the woodchopper to me? That's the equivalent of one saying, I am a brain surgeon. What do I care if we have people driving garbage trucks or not, or street sweepers? It's true that I'm much higher than them, but without them, I wouldn't be able to walk out of my house eventually. Right? Besides all the diseases and all the who knows what that can, God forbid, fester if no one's collecting the garbage. So we need each other. Not only we need each other, but what he brings out is we complement each other. The head complements the feet, but the feet complement the head. And that is the idea of unity. And that is the ultimate unity. And that's what we need to know when we stand before Hashem. And if we don't have that sense of unity, and we still have a sense of, no, I don't need him, I don't need her, and I'm myself, and you're not part of them, then God forbid, who knows if you can be standing steadfast on this day of judgment because there's something lacking. And that's really the message that he emphasizes. In verse 11, there's another discourse where that discourse too, but another discourse where he elaborates on this idea that in every Rosh Hashana, we renew our covenant with Hashem. It's a renewal of the covenant, or a re-emphasis. The covenant will never go away, but it's made stronger. Okay? So I don't have an example that comes to mind, so for lack of a better one, we're not in any way making something new, or even anew, but it's emphasizing it, almost like if you have something where you can see it very clear, but living in Florida, I think we can all appreciate this, where anything that's exposed to the sun, with time, it gets a little dull. And all you do is you take a little fresh paint, a little fresh ink, and just make it, bring it to life, right? And this is, perhaps what he means. In every Rosh Hashana, we renew our commitment to the Torah and to God. And the first and foremost way that we do it is by announcing Hashem as the King, which basically covers everything. When you say, Hashem, you're the King, I am the subject, I am subservient to you, so your will is what I need to do. Not only need to do, I want to do, I will do. That is the covenant of being committed to the Torah. It's a very, very, very powerful one. I want you to look also at verse 13 and 14. Actually, if we're reading 13 and 14, we may as well read 12 also. In order to sustain you today as his people, and he will be for you as a God. Remember I said there's no such thing as the world being without the Jewish people. As he promised you. and as he promised your forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And not with you alone am I making this covenant and this oath curse, but with whoever is here with us, standing today in the presence of Hashem our God, and with those who are not here with us today. And when he says not here with us today, he means physically not with us. But every single soul was present, was represented by all those people that were standing there. Now, if we want to speak halachically, legally speaking, the question is, true, just made the argument that every single soul was present there. But I'm not living now as a soul. I'm living as a soul in a body. So I have my feelings as a body, as a person who's alive in a body. So how can this covenant apply to me? Unless I accept it. In other words, how can you force me into the covenant without me actually and actively being present there and actively accepting the covenant? Do you understand the question?
Mm-hmm.
How is this done? How is this applicable to me? The answer is that ultimately this covenant is in the best interest of every single Jew.
Right.
And even if I'm saying I don't want it, even if I'm at least pretentiously arguing against it, but deep down in the core of my soul, this is what I want. There's a rule that you cannot achieve something for someone else, you cannot impose something on someone unless it's in their best interest, in their favor. Okay? Take for example, a child, okay, does not have the ability of acquisition. They don't have yet the mindset and know how to acquire things, and therefore they don't have the ability to purchase and so on. When you do it on their behalf, or you receive a gift on their behalf, I'm talking about now, I'm not speaking civilly, I'm talking about halachically speaking, how can that be effective? How can that be real? How can that acquisition be real? In other words, how can this child own it, and then when they become an adult, it's theirs? Or even while they're a child, and if someone takes it away, they're stealing from this child. Well, the child doesn't have the power of acquisition. And the answer is that when you're acting in their good interest, in their best interest, this is something that had they had the capacity and been able to process it mentally, they themselves would have reached that conclusion of, wow, this is good for me, I want it. And therefore, if it's in their rightful interest, in their good interest, the acquisition is effective. Likewise, if I'm acquiring something for somebody that's not present, without them knowing, they've never appointed me as their attorney, but I go, you know what? Let's just say someone's handing out something, and I go, I'm going to acquire this for my brother. Laid on my neck. I said, you know what? I got two. Everybody wants this item. You know what? I can make a lot of money now. No, I got it. It's mine. But in the time that I took possession of it, the time I acquired it on his behalf, and I said so. And there's witnesses. I said, yeah, but he never got it. Yes, he did. But he never did an act of acquisition. He didn't even know I'm getting it for him. So how was that effectively for him? The answer is the same. When it's something something that he himself would have wanted had he been there, or he would have agreed to it because it's something so good, then I can actually act on his behalf, even though he's not present, or even furthermore, even if he doesn't know about it, because it's in his best interest. Likewise, this thing. When Moshe is imposing it on all future generations, you go, yeah, but why? Who? How did you know that I want? I know. Every Jew wants this. And this is in your ultimate best interest. And therefore, this covenant takes effect even for people who weren't there, even for people who later convert, even for people who later will come and argue and say, had I been there, I would. No. This is the ultimate good for you, and your ultimate best interest, and that's why it applies. Any questions? Just another very quick thing. The next, the next about 13, 14 verses speak about the responsibility of one Jew for another. Okay? And Hashem really, it goes into how, God forbid, once you come to the land, God forbid, if somebody strays how it's going to bring about punishment and so on. And this is basically where, as we just explained, now you're all together. You all complement each other, but you're all responsible for each other. And therefore, if some people do bad, that can affect everyone. Okay? Similar to the old example, the old age example of a passenger on a boat making a hole under his seat. It's going to affect everyone. So you're all responsible. Okay? You can't ignore it because, oh, he's doing it in his seat. No. It's not only his seat, it's our boat. And that's what Moshe is saying to them. Now you're all going to be responsible for each other. Which, interestingly, the Hebrew word, the Hebrew adage for this is Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lezeh. All Jews are Arevim, are responsible guarantors one for another. The previous Rebbe points out, once again, that there are several verbs for this word, guarantors. There's other ways of expressing it. Why is this the choice word by our sages? Because the word Arevim, which means guarantors, responsible, also can come from the root word arev, which means sweet. This is not an obligation. This is not an imposition. This is actually a great thing that we all have to care for each other. And also the word arev means we're all mixed together. We're all tossed together. We're connected, whether we understand it or not, whether we like it or not. However, the issue always is, okay, so some individuals can ruin it for everyone else. And that's where he concludes in verse 28. Look on page 536 in our book, where he says, the hidden matters are Hashem's. That's for Hashem, our God. And the revealed matters are ours and our children's forever to perform all the statements of the Torah. And what he's saying is as follows. Moshe sees the face of the people as he's saying what's going to happen, when people stray, and the terrible punishment that it's going to bring, and the havoc that it's going to rain upon the entire land and all the entire people collectively. And people are looking at him. And he goes, I understand. Because of course the question is, Moshe, how can we be responsible for the individual's actions or the individual's thoughts? And Moshe says to them, you're not. The hidden things, that's for Hashem. But I do expect you, and you are expected, and this covenant expects you, that when something is clear and obvious, and you see people you see wrongdoing, you can't just turn a blind eye. You can't just ignore it and say, well, it's not happening in my backyard, it's happening in someone else's backyard. No. And by the way, by extension, I think this is important for our society. Some people are like, as long as it's not, no, it is bothering. Now, if something is done in hidden, something is done in hiding, something is done in a concealed manner, and you have no way of knowing it, you're not going to be responsible for it. And I think what he's also saying is, you're not going to suffer the effects of it, because you had no way of
preventing it or...
So you're not expected to pay the price for it. But those things that are being done out in the public, or that there's common knowledge about, and everybody ignores and says, well, at least me and my family were safe, or spiritually safe, and we don't go out there and try to change the trend, and try to make a change, and try to do something about it, then you're all responsible for it.
It's also
And I have to say,
it's part of the morning
a very
prayers.
practical example.
I said
Today,
it's part of the morning prayers as well.
Okay, so you're aligning it with the mitzvah of loving your fellow man as yourself. Practically speaking, and this is not saying to throw stones at people when you see them doing something wrong, because that is not effective in making things better, and actually it generates the negative effect, and therefore you become now responsible for that person doing worse, because you've now intimidated that person. You've now turned them against it with zeal and with passion. Whereas until now they were doing it out of comfort, or out of what we call it, out of pleasure. That's the term. Meaning it just served a purpose. Shabbat was a day of rest. Let's say I'm using a classical example, and they were driving in the car on Shabbat in Israel. Now you've turned them into zealous. Now you've made it into a determination thing where I'm going to show you. I'm going to drive on Shabbat. And it's not the person, it's not the driver who's culpable, it's the person who threw stones in it. So it's obvious that you need to approach it in the right manner. Moshe didn't say to go with sticks and stones and beat people up when you see them doing the wrong thing. Of course, educate, try to bring them closer and so on. And that's where I'm headed. The practical example is, and it's amazing, just today I shared this with a young man that has 2 children, and I was encouraging him, even though he says he sends them to some kind of Jewish school, and I said, really at home, you need to put into effect the real Jewish chinuch. Now, interestingly, the term we use for a Jewish education is chinuch. The true meaning, the literal meaning of the word chinuch is not education, because education means to teach subjects, to teach different matters pedagogically. The real true meaning of the word chinuch is training. And you got to instill things in a manner of training. I said, if you, for example, give me an example. I said, say Shema with your kid, a 4-year-old kid, say the Shema with them every night before they go to sleep. You're not telling them what to do. You're not telling them to behave as a Jew. It's something, it becomes a matter of fact, a matter of training. It becomes ingrained. If you have a mezuzah on every door and the child knows that before they go to sleep they have to kiss the mezuzah, it becomes ingrained in them. I told them, you have a charity box, put a coin. The child should put a coin every day. And even later, the suggestion I gave him for that particular idea is, when it fills up, you tell the child, you're going to get to decide where the money goes. You want to give it to a homeless person, you want to give it to a school, you want to give it to underprivileged children. The idea that the child, not one day you educate them about this concept of charity and giving, it's too late. It's too late. It may or may not ignite their excitement, pique their interest. But if it's something that just becomes ingrained, right? The same way certain things are ingrained. You don't leave the house without your pants on. No one has to educate you to do it. And if someone has to educate you to do it, we got a problem, Houston. You know what I mean? We got a serious problem.
You deserve the white jacket.
You become, as you get older, as you become cognitive of what's going on, you're trained that before you leave, you put on your coat, you put on it just becomes something that you trained to live like a person. Likewise this. And this is the idea. I said to him that sadly, I say the silent killer of the Jewish people, of us, and sadly, worse, in effect, than even the Holocaust, is assimilation.
Yeah.
Is assimilation. And assimilation typically is from absolute ignorance and lack of chinuch, lack of training. And I'm not talking like going to temples and this. All those fixes are too little, too late, or the wrong fixes. Because to go to temple, just using that example, to go to temple for an hour a week, I don't see how that's going to solve the problem, unless they're going to happen to hear something that's just going to, excite them, inspire them, and then they're going to do. But it's the little things that just, those things in life that you know what I mean? In other words, if I have bad character all week, I still may go once a week and serve a few sandwiches to the homeless, but I'm a rotten person and it's difficult to live with me. Look, that 1 hour I go downtown and I give out sandwiches. You know what? Stop giving out those sandwiches. Just learn how to, how to curb your temper, how to be a little more polite. You know what I'm saying? In the office, at home, it's the little things that really amount to the big things and make the big saying is. And sadly, there are communities which they're very religious and very pious, but perhaps they don't pay as much attention to this as I, and it's not because of who I am personally, but having the merit, and I don't know why I merited to have it, but I'm lucky that we had the inspiration of the Rebbe. The Rebbe lived this, breathed this every single second of the day, and he forced us, literally forced us, in a good way, in a pleasant way, he forced it down our throats, that we live this and breathe this all the time and be cognitive of it and do whatever we can, and then some, that you say, well, I keep Shabbat, my family, we have Shabbat. No, go out there and invite somebody in. Go out there and move to another community where people otherwise would not know about Shabbat, where otherwise people would not be aware of the Jewish festivals. Do what you can. I got to be honest with you. As we're about to approach Rosh Hashana, do you think it's exciting? Every year I got to worry where we're going to get the minyan, wonder who's going to come and who's not going to come. It's not easy.
Tell me about it.
But the knowledge that even if one Jew that otherwise will not hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is now going to hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that's what Moshe was talking about. Does that answer your question? So that's what it is. So that's the call to action. And that's what we're all about. And that's what has to be. And this is, but at the end of the day, remember what I said. Kol Yisrael arevim ze lazeh. We're all responsible, we're guarantors for another. But the word arevim means that it's not a burden, it's not a pain in the neck. Sometimes it may feel like it, we're only human. But ultimately, this is the sweetest thing, that we look out for each other. And we look out for each other, not knowing I got your back if you did something wrong. No, what can I do to help another Jew? Okay? So, going into this new year, everybody certainly will be Nitzavim, standing steadfast, with a splendid, beautiful, sealed document saying, great year, and as we say, Shana Tova, a good year, Umituka, and sweet. Sometimes it's good, but it's not so sweet. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you come out at the end, and it's like, yeah, it's all good. You know what I mean? But you want it to be good and sweet. And like the Rebbe would always emphasize, in the revealed good. Because ultimately, everything that happens is good, but what we ask for, what we pray for, what we wish for each other is the good, not that Hashem understands it's good, but that on our level, on our terms, it is good. Amen.